Welcome to the Brigham Young University Family History Library webinar series. My name is Sean Firmage. I will be your host for this webinar. Today we will be pleased to hear from James Tanner, who will be giving a presentation titled Inside FamilySearch.org Revealed. James has a bachelor's in Spanish and a master's in linguistics from the University of Utah. He received a Juris Doctor degree in law from Arizona State University. He worked for 39 years as Arizona trial attorney. He previously owned a retail computer business and an Apple Macintosh software company. James has over 35 years of experience in genealogical research and is a blogger for Genealogies Star and the blog Rejoice and Be Exceeding Glad. He served for 10 years as a missionary at the Mesa, Arizona Family Search Library and is currently serving at the BYU Family History Library. He is co-author or author of over 25 books on genealogical research. He has presented at expos and conferences around the U.S. and Canada. James has 7 children and 33 grandchildren. As a reminder, our next webinar will be tomorrow at the same time, also presented by James. It will be What's New in Programs and Apps for Genealogy by James Tanner. All right, James, we will go ahead and turn the time over to you.
Tanner, glad to be back for another webinar here for the BYU Family History Library. Reminding everyone that these are recorded and uploaded to our BYU Family History Library YouTube channel on youtube.com. Look for BYU Family History Library, and we now have close to 280 videos as of this particular broadcast. I'm sure that will go up. I think we've been averaging almost a little bit more than one about every day or so in the last month. I think we did 24 videos in the last month. So there's always going to be something new here for us to do. Today we're going to talk about inside the FamilySearch.org, and we're going to call that Inside FamilySearch.org Revealed. Now, the FamilySearch.org website is a very large website, a very popular website, gets millions of visits, and it is probable that many of the things on this website are either something that you were unaware was even available, or which you could find only with a little bit of difficulty. And so we're going to go through some of those items and some of the more common things and explain how all this fits together into this very large website out there for genealogical research. First of all, we need to understand that this is a free website. Now, a lot of times you'll see free on computers, and what free on computers means free if you buy something else, or free if you don't want the full version and you only get part of the version because then you have to pay more and to get the pro version or the expanded version or whatever. But this is really free. There's no obligation. There's never a hidden charge. You're not ever going to get dinged for something that you do with the FamilySearch.org website. And as a matter of fact, you do not even have to register in order to use most of the things on most of the features of the website. You could, if you try to use some of the features like the family tree or some of the other items, or try to look at certain items, they may require you to have a free registration, but be aware that that registration is not carry any further obligations, no more contact, anything. When you do sign in, you can, however, if you happen to be a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or the Mormon Church, then you can receive emails from the church, from Family Search and from LDS.org as a result of registering. The reason for that is because your registration on FamilySearch.org is also, if you are a member, is also a dual registration for LDS.org. So understanding that, if you're a member of the church, you only have to register for one or the other, and then you're automatically registered for both. So this is, but other than that, the sort of relationship, there is nothing about the website that is anything that requires any kind of payment or anything else. And to remind you, what I just said was that there's no registration required for most of the features. You don't even have to register to use the website. You can go in and look at records for most of the records, and you can do lots of other things with the websites. without registering at all. Um, the most important feature on the website from a user standpoint, besides the vast number of digitized documents that are being made available, is the Family Tree program. And that is a program that requires a registration, and it's a free registration for the Family Tree. Another issue that comes up frequently is the question about whether you need to be a member of the LDS Church in order to use the program or be on the Family Tree, and the answer is no, that is not a requirement. There is an LDS registration which allows LDS members to connect to certain other parts of the church's uh, websites and online programs, but that is not something that is obvious if you're not if you register without an LDS account. Okay, so before we get into the whole program, into the FamilySearch.org program, have to understand there is a manual, there is an instruction set. It's online, and it's called the Family History Guide, and it's the official approved training resource for Family Search. It is located on a website that's called thefhguide.com, and it has been only recently, I'd say, well, let's see, we're probably about 2 months, maybe 3 months since the Family History Guide was approved as the training resource. But, and so far there aren't that many connections between the main website and the Family History Guide. But I would guess that in the future you'll see more connections here. The Family History Guide, you can get to it directly by typing thefhguide.com. This will give you a structured, free program that will help you to understand how Family Search works and how genealogical research works. And it's not aimed at beginners, it's not aimed at the advanced, it's a broad spectrum program that contains thousands of links and other videos and handouts and text material that will help you learn about the genealogical process. So now if we're looking at the FamilySearch.org website, then the first thing we want to know is what's there, and we have about 1.23 billion images containing about 5.66 billion searchable names. That's an overwhelmingly large number of records that are on this particular website. Now, to understand the FamilySearch.org records, we have to go back a few years to 1938. In 1938, the predecessor of FamilySearch.org, which was called the Genealogical Society of Utah, and there were a number of name changes and organizational changes over the years, but we ended up with FamilySearch.org as the successor organization. And in that regard, they began in 1938 to microfilm records around the world, and eventually accumulated about 2.4 million rolls of microfilm. That's hundreds and hundreds of millions of images that are available. And for the last 10 years or so, Family Search has been digitizing those images and putting them online. As that process goes, presently, at the time of this particular presentation, about half of the microfilm has now been digitized. Most of that's been digitized is being put online very rapidly. Now, Family Search had these teams of missionaries. They were volunteer missionaries for the church, and they were traveling around the world, primarily taking microfilm with microfilm cameras, or cameras taking microfilm copies of the records. But That has now transitioned to digitized cameras, and they're now doing digital records directly around the world. And those additional records are also being added to the collections on FamilySearch.org. So this number, about the number of images and the number of searchable names, will probably grow dramatically. In fact, inevitably will grow dramatically over the next weeks and years, months and years that are coming. Secondly, there's about an average of 488 million new names being indexed every year. Well, the indexing process has to do with volunteers primarily looking at the records, transcribing the information, and entering it into a format in a database that can be searched by the computer programs. So the indexing is an integral part of making these records available. Without the indexing effort, which is also a volunteer effort that can be, you go directly to indexing on the FamilySearch.org, and they have all the training materials are right there. And just recently they put the program on the internet so that it can be accessed from tablets and other mobile devices. So this is a huge another part of the program that's involves many tens of thousands of people worldwide in an indexing effort. There are also 737 million sources listed for individuals in the family tree. Now, the family tree has about 1.4 billion people on the tree. That means individual entries. At one point in time, I would have been editorial at this and making that statement, because I would have said, yeah, probably a lot of them are duplicates. Well, actually, at one point in time, there were well over 1.4 billion records in the family tree. And then, beginning a year ago in 2016, those records, the program itself was upgraded, and after a very long and involved process, the end product of that was that the ability to eliminate and merge duplicates became not only possible, but became a rather straightforward process. And as a result, the number of records on the program, the number of profiles, if you want to call them that, or individual entities on the program, family tree program, dropped from around 1.4 billion entries down to about 1.2 billion entries. So a lot of people were eliminated through merging their duplicate records. Well, there's still a measure of duplication, but most of that, a lot of that duplication effort has peaked and is now on the decline, because there are lots of safeguards now put into the program that prevent or eliminate duplicate records in a very efficient fashion. So the fact that that there are all of these names in the program, in the family tree program, is important. But what is more important is that connected to those names are millions. That 737 million number is probably outdated, since I have to draft these presentations a few weeks before they're actually presented. And so that number has probably gone up considerably, but those millions and millions of sources that are being added are a resource for genealogical researchers. If you go into the family tree and look for one of your ancestors and you find that ancestor, there's a very good chance that there's someone else has documented that entry and put in the census records, birth records, whatever records that were available for that individual. So we'll kind of get to that, but this gives you an idea of the scope. Now, in addition to these types of things, there's a few surprises out there. There's some things out there that you might not know about, and you might be very surprised to learn about. So first of all, we have historical, this is the overview. We have historical record collections. The historical record collections are the digitized images. And presently at the time I did this, there were 2,221 collections. A collection is just a huge number, can be a huge number of related records. 1 year of the U.S. Census is one collection. So for instance, the 1940, 1930, 1920 census, each of those is a collection. A collection could have a few hundred records, or it could have millions of records, and some of the collections have huge numbers of records. But so these are just the various digitized collections that are available. Secondly, there's the catalog. Um, as a genealogist, I can't say enough about the catalog on the FamilySearch.org. The catalog has so many different uses. As a matter of fact, I have done YouTube videos specifically on the catalog itself because it's such a valuable resource for doing genealogical research. Can't imagine how you could live without having to get into that catalog and find out. One of the basic things the catalog does is to give you an idea of all the different kinds of records that are available for any specific location in the world. You look at the search the catalog for places before you worry about any kind of people. And as a matter of fact, seldom look for names in the catalog. That's just not a productive thing. It's a catalog. It's a listing of classifications of information, and so it's a marvelous tool, and I use that probably as much as any other resource that I use for doing research. They also has a digital book collection. The the world famous Family History Library in Salt Lake City is, of course, the repository for a number of books. They have hundreds, actually hundreds of thousands of books, but the FamilySearch.org website now houses a digital book collection. At the time of this post, there were 349,782 digitized books. Of those, about 260 to 270,000 were from the Family History Library in Salt Lake City. Now, if you think about that, that means that you can go online and search word for word through all of these 350, almost 350,000 books, and at the rate of they're going at increasing at the rate of about 1,000 a week. So about every week they digitize another 1,000 books and add them to the collection. So this is an ongoing project with not only the Family History Library in Salt Lake City, but many other libraries such as the Allen County Library and the Mid-Continent Genealogy Library and some others, many other libraries out there that have contributed their book collections to this digitization effort. Many people don't even know that that book collection is there on the website. Of course, and I've already mentioned this, the family tree, which is a vast resource for people to not only put their information, as we say in genealogy, park your information on this family tree, but the fact that it's a unified family tree means that you can see for each individual all of the accumulated research and resources that have been accumulated for that person for well over 100 years of submissions. So it's a very significant resource out there, not just for putting your family tree someplace and preserving the information, but also for doing research and finding out what other people have found about your family. There's also the Research Wiki with more than 80,000 pages of explanation and information about the genealogy. This is a vast resource that has also been fairly not made too prominently, except more than it was, I think, for the first few years that it was in operation. And then there's a section called Genealogies, and the Genealogies section contains some of the older resources that have now been a little bit replaced, but in most cases, the information here is quite broad, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And part of what is contained in the genealogy section is the old, some of you may be familiar with the ancestral file or the pedigree resource file or the International Genealogical Index. All of those records are preserved in the genealogy section on FamilySearch.org. The memory section is a very big section, and memories are being added for each individual in the family tree. There's a memory section that can be added to tag to that individual and to other members of the family or people on the family tree. And that memory section contains photos or uh, documents, scanned documents, digitized documents, or uh, audio files, or stories and text files. So all of those are contained in memories, and there are just millions of memories that are being added to the program. Okay, so now let's look a little deeper at each of these and get an idea of what they are and how they work a little bit. This is the historical record collection. This is the first search field for the historical records, where you can put in a name and some information about an individual and search in the historical records. This is a listing. When you click on the browse by collections, the, um, you can look directly at the list of all of the collections that they have, and then there are some filters over there on the left hand side, so you can filter down and see how many collections there are in any particular geographical area or date period of time or anything else that you want to use out of the filtering that's available there. And that will bring up certain collections that you may want to search directly into the collection rather than searching the entire database at once. So now you can see here, and if you click on where it says last updated, excuse me, I clicked too fast. If you click over on the side where it says last updated, you'll see the column of records with the newest records brought to the top. The second thing, I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because in an hour it could take me longer than an hour to explain even one part of the program. But this basically is an overview to give you an idea of what's here and the types of things that you should be looking for. Now, the catalog is under the search tab at the top of the page, the selection that says search. And there's the different search ones. The records is the historical record collections, and then there's the family tree and the genealogies and the catalog and the books and the wiki. But this is the catalog, and the catalog is basically set up to show you the records. Now, an important thing that I want to point out here is not to explain in depth about how the catalog works, but to indicate that one of the things that's happening with Family Search is that the digitization problem, that is taking the paper and microfilm images and putting them into a digital format that can be viewed on the computer, is proceeding much faster than they can be incorporated into the historical records. So what's happening is that these records are being put into big files like this, waiting to be indexed. They're not indexed. This is basically a duplication of the microfilm, just in the exact order of the microfilm. So if you were looking at an old roll of microfilm through a viewer, you would be able to see. You would see just this. You would see these individual images. However, the difference here is great, because what's happening here is that a lot of these records are being put in the catalog before they ever show up as historical records or are searchable by doing the search engine. So if you were to search for a name on Family Search, you would only be searching a small percentage of the overall records that had been digitized. So you would be missing, first of all the records that are sitting out there in the catalog that are on microfilm. And then you would, in addition, be missing all the records that were yet to be indexed. So there's a lot of records out there to search, either on microfilm or on digital copies that you're not finding if you go to search for names. So this is just a kind of be aware of this fact that you may need to get into the catalog and find out if they have the records available, either digital copies or microfilm copies. Now, kind of a word to the wise here. The age of microfilm is fastly coming to an end. Microfilm availability in the world is almost disappeared. And it is inevitable at some point in time in the future that Family Search will have to discontinue their practice of shipping microfilm records out to family history centers around the world. So bear that in mind, and that the copies of those records, those microfilms, are going to be found in the catalog. And the option you have is to view them as this kind of film strip, thumb view of the records. No matter how much you like microfilm, and no matter how much you like the old microfilm viewers, and I'm not too acquainted with anybody who has a real, emotional attachment to those old machines. But if you do, you have to realize that this is a absolutely incredibly more efficient way to look at microfilm. I can click on any one of those reduced pictures and jump right to that page. And I can find things so much faster than sitting there and listening to the microfilm go back and forth while it rolls through the microfilm roll. So this is a new way of looking at it. Now let's kind of jump over to the digital books here for a moment. I mentioned this, and I mentioned some of the details. But here's an idea. For example, I looked for my surname in the family history books section of the FamilySearch.org website. Put in the word Tanner as my surname, and I came up with 22,318 results. That was how many book references to my name were there in books. So obviously I'm going to have to be a little bit more specific, or use some of the filters on the left hand side of the screen to cut that number down. But I'm looking through the entire book. I'm searching word for word through these entire books. All these books have been run through what we call optical character recognition, and all of the words are searchable. So you can search for your names or your dates or places or whatever you want to search in all of these books and get it. Now, there's a little bit of a catch here. Because of copyright and other licensing restrictions, not all of these materials are going to show up immediately on screen. Some of them are going to come up with, you do not have access rights to that product, which means basically you're going to have to go someplace else, like a family history center, or ultimately even to the family history library in Salt Lake to see the record itself. Well, that's, unfortunately there are some people who come to me and say, well, that's all I ever see. And I say, well, that may be the case with the place where you're looking, but that's not the general rule. Usually most of these materials, the vast majority of these materials are readily and completely available online. And I would mention another issue, and that is if it isn't available on Family Search, go out and search on Google for the same book. Just get the title and go look for the book, and you might find it completely digitized and available on some other website. Not everybody has the same restrictions that Family Search has. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about the family tree. Now, obviously, if you look at our webinar series here from BYU Family History Library, you probably would see that we've done dozens and dozens of webinars on the family tree. We have all sorts of other instructional material. We have the Family History Guide, the fhguide.com, all sorts of things to help people understand the family tree. But it is the kind of the gem in the crown of this website, because it is the most approachable and the most interesting type of information that you can imagine. And it's got a few little quirks, I have to say that, having worked on it since its inception. But I'll tell you one thing: the program itself is extremely well done. It is not the family tree is not the problem. The data is the problem. The family tree is the solution to the problem. And so, even though there's still, I think the number of people who are overly frustrated with the family tree have decreased over the years, simply because a lot of the problems that they were seeing initially are being resolved. But all in all, working on the family tree is a very stable and very, very useful program. These are the different views. The first view I showed was the landscape view. The next one was the portrait view. This is called the fan chart view. And then last, we have what's called a descendancy view. So you can see the people who are the descendants of an ancestor. And so you have different ways of viewing the information in the family tree. Okay, so we're going to move to the research wiki. And the wiki presently has about, let's go back, 88,000, 80 plus thousand pages. It is a web-based wiki, which means that the information is always being updated and changed. It is also sort of like a net. You go from link to link to link to learn about information. It is not a place to go look for names. You don't go in there and search for your ancestors. You go into the research wiki to find out how to find your ancestors. So I think that's an important thing to remember about it. And over the years, it has proved to be an extremely valuable resource. In fact, the Family History Guide is a structured introduction to to learning about family history. But it does not replace the Research Wiki. In fact, the Family History Guide links to many of the articles in the Research Wiki and uses them to give you a structured learning environment. So they're complementary and they don't replace each other. They're not one way to look at the genealogy. Okay, now I think important to understand this genealogy section. Um, I think this is probably the least looked at and the least used part of the Family Search website, FamilySearch.org website. First of all, I mentioned that it had the ancestral file. Well, the ancestral file was a user-contributed file. It is lineage linked, meaning that the names appear in families, in pedigrees. You can search it for names. There's hundreds of millions of names in the ancestral file. But the interesting thing about it is user contributed, which means that in many cases there are no sources for the information, and in other cases the information is simply wrong, and there's no way to correct it. So it's kind of a base point reference point for genealogy research, but it's not a reliable source in the sense that you want to say, oh, I got this out of the ancestral file, and someone will say, well, where did they get it? And that would be the end of that particular using that as a source. The next thing they have is the ancestral file, excuse me, is the International Genealogical Index. And the International Genealogical Index, or the IGI, has two different sections. One of the sections involves user-contributed information that was accumulated over the years. Unfortunately, this is not lineage linked, so each just individual can be in there 4 or 5 times as the names were extracted from records, different records primarily in England, some in Mexico, not very many in the United States. And in addition to that, it was a record of the ordinances that were performed in the LDS temples. And so those are another record of names that are there. It is also it's a good reference material. Until quite recently, it was probably the best place to get information about parish registers in England. But it's been replaced by some of the larger websites, by Family Search itself and by Find My Past and some of the other websites like Ancestry that have a lot of English records. But it's still a valuable resource to look at. The pedigree resource file, once again, is a user-contributed file. It was originally built as a backup for information that you had on your personal computer, and so there are sometimes multiple copies of the same files in that resource. And it's there. You can use it. Sometimes there's references that have sources and are able to be verified, and sometimes there are not. And then we have a couple of things that are completely different than that. We have the Guild of One Name Studies records in here, and this is a primarily an organization based in Great Britain. And what it does is they accumulate all the information about one surname, not just one, but surnames one at a time, I guess is a good way to put it. So that if you're looking for all the Tanners, information about all the Tanners or all the Smiths or all the Petersons or all the Jones or all the Robertsons or whatever it is, you can go to the Guild of One Name Studies and see what they have information about that particular name. And what you might find, of course, is information about your family. Now, the more common name that the more common your name, the more likely it is that the information will just be general and not that helpful. One thing they do have, which is part of their organization that's apart from Family Search, is they do statistical gathering of the names. In other words, they'll tell you how many people in each county or parish have that particular surname. So it's kind of a useful way to, it's a useful subject. They have many other services besides what they have here that is searchable. The other one here is called Community Trees. Now, Community Trees is are also compiled genealogies, but these were done by people who had an interest in a particular geographic area or a particular type of record. One of the things that people are often interested to find out is that the Community Trees has the European royalty file and has a list as expansive a list as is currently available, and it's updated regularly, by the way, of all of the information about everyone who is could be considered royalty in Europe, including England. So if you want the master file for all the royalty, it's right here in the genealogy, in the Community Trees program on the Genealogies on Family Search. You can look in there and do searches by, king this and duke that and earl that, and they'll be all there in the Community Trees program. So anybody who thinks that they're doing new research in that old and Middle Ages and times, very old age type stuff, is probably hasn't become aware of the Community Trees program because it's pretty comprehensive. And last, they have oral genealogies, which are being collected in places where there's not a great deal of written language and written records, particularly in Africa and South Pacific and other places where there are some extensive oral genealogies, and those are being recorded and transcribed and searchable here in the genealogy section. Next, we have the memories. Memories is what I mentioned is where you can attach to any individual in the family tree photographs, documents, stories, which include which are in the form of text files, and audio files. They're quite small audio files. No, they do not have a provision for adding videos as yet. That's been talked about a lot, just hasn't happened yet. But there are, as I mentioned, 737 million, so there's multiple millions of records that now have been attached. That was sources. I'm sorry, I got that. My area is confused. There are millions of memories. And I don't think I've seen a number on the total number of memories, but even if I had, it would have been out of date almost instantly. There are those of us who are putting on a lot of memories. I have put on a couple of thousand so far, and have many more thousands to go, and go through the process of tagging those and making sure they attach, to the individuals that are mentioned in the records. And as a matter of fact, I've hired one of my granddaughters this summer to spend her time and get paid for it, by the way, to put in memories and tag them, and she's done a very good job so far this summer. So you can add your own photos, documents, stories, and audio files. Many of us realize that the efforts that will be made by Family Search and the church are extensive in preserving this information, and that it's probably one of the safest places that we're aware of for storing our photos and documents in a digital format. And of course, there's no charge for uploading the photos and to memories. Oh, one thing though I forgot to mention is there are number limits on each of the categories. So they're really quite high. In some cases, like 1,000 for an individual, but there are some limits, and so you may run into a limit if you get into the tens of thousands of records. Now, FamilySearch.org, and this is kind of the understatement of the week, of the month or week, is a large and complex website. And so, interestingly enough, not all the features or pages are readily available from the menus. Um, and this is an interesting problem because there's things out there that you could click through the whole program and never find. And so what we have to do is understand that these are the hidden features of the program back there in the jungles of the Family Search program out there. So what's out there that's hidden? Well, I'm going to say they're not hidden in the sense that they're impossible to find, or that you really, you have to have any kind of code words or anything to get to them. But they're just things that you don't think of to look at that may have some very interesting help. And this one on the first one that I put up here is called the Family Search App Gallery. Now, it's not hidden in the sense that it's totally unavailable, but it is hidden in the sense that the only link to it is at the bottom of the pages. And these pages sometimes are quite long on FamilySearch.org. So you have to scroll down and scroll down and scroll down, and finally you get to the bottom of the page, and there's a link that says App Gallery. Okay, so that's where you get to it. But as you get down there, you'll find out that what's happened here is that Family Search has accumulated, now a little over 100 different programs that have a relationship, either close relationship in the sense that they're Family Search partners, or are kind of generally related because they're in the general business of doing genealogy, that are listed here. And there are links out to these programs, and it's a very interesting place to explore. Now tomorrow, the next one of these webinars that I'll be doing, I'll be talking about some of these programs. Obviously, I'm not going to go through 100 plus, but I'm going to try to hit some highlights, at least those things that I think might be of interest. So there's another webinar coming up that'll get further into the app gallery, which is the place where you can go. Now, here's an interesting thing about FamilySearch.org. It's all searchable by Google. And there are certain parts of it that don't come out. In other words, you don't get the content of the records, and you don't get some, an image of a digitized document is basically unsearchable by any means that we know right now, except looking at it, reading it. So basically what we're going to do when we say that they're searchable is that you do that. But memories and things like that on FamilySearch.org, and the apps and all of those kinds of things you can find by searching on Google. So this is a way to get into the program. So here is one place to find out where all of the different parts of this program are existent. This is also way at the bottom of each of those pages on the FamilySearch.org website. And that is what's called the Family Search sitemap. And here there are links directly to the various pages. And this is really, in some instances, there are no other links outside of the sitemap to get to some of these features. So this is the Family Search sitemap. It's at the bottom of every page if you just keep scrolling down enough, except search engine pages and things like that. So if you're in the family tree, looking at the family tree itself, you need to go out to Family Search, to the home page, main page, or to one of the other pages of to look at the bottom of the page. Okay, so here's one, for example, that's in there in the sitemap that I just either have to go through Google and look for it, or go to the sitemap to find it. And this is the 1851 England and Wales jurisdictions. It's a, a if you're doing research in England or Wales, this is an invaluable source. Basically has every parish and has information about the records that you can expect and where they are and what the parishes are and the outlines. And it's an interactive map where you can click down and you click on a county and then you can click see all the parish outlines, and you can actually figure out whether a town is in a parish or not in a parish. It just gives you a tremendous information. It's like the, the greatest window you've ever had to English and Wales jurisdictions and it's 1851, which is corresponds to the 1851 census. Uh, and the parishes have not changed that much, even up to the present or even further back into the past. So this is kind of a good place to start your research into these various records and things that are available. Just a whole lot of information that's attached. And you can also get there directly by typing maps.familysearch.org. Um, my point, in the way that I work with so many different programs, that what I sometimes I can work with them so frequently that I remember these addresses, but a lot of times I just go back to Google and start looking for it if I can't find it through the menus on Family Search. Okay, so now there's another thing. This is primarily for LDS church members, for those who are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and they have free access to certain partner programs. To get to those partner programs and register for the free access is done through this partner access website or page. It's part of FamilySearch.org, but there is not a direct link out of the FamilySearch.org website except through the sitemap. So once again, we're back to that sitemap at the bottom of the page that'll take you to what's called Partner Access. Now, if you want to get to the program directly, you can, or this page directly, you can go to FamilySearch.org/partner access. It'll take you right to the page. Or if you're on Google, you can search for Family Search Partner Access and it will take you to the page. But otherwise, it's not. It's one of those things that are buried down in the sitemap. Now, here's another program. This is a mapping program, and it is called the Standard Finder. Okay. Now, why is it the Standard Finder? Well, there's an interesting aspect to the Family Search family tree, and that is that there's a movement by Family Search to standardize. That makes all the places so that those places that are with standardized names are also linked to the geographic coordinates for where that event occurred. So that if you're talking about your ancestor and something happened in Roanoke, Virginia, or in Duke, wherever, North Carolina, in Raleigh, North Carolina, or in some other place in the United States, what you would have, or in the world, would be a standard name for that place. Now, for example, the standard name for where we are is Provo, Utah, United States. Okay, and Family Search has chosen to use United States instead of USA. That's kind of arbitrary, but in any way, what that happens though is that Provo, Utah is the name of the county here, by the way, and Utah is also the name of the state. So it's Provo, Utah, United States. And that gives a very specific geographic coordinate to a location on the face of the earth, someplace in the middle of Provo out here. And so that helps us identify. So the standard finder is kind of the general reference where all of these names and all of these locations are gathered into one program. So you can look in this program and find out what the standard name is for any place you want to look. And the questions always come up, what about places that have disappeared, or what about places, all sorts of different combinations? Well, This is not a static product. It is growing and acquiring more information all the time. So new place names as there are added constantly, and historic place names are being refined constantly. So you can really get to the point where you can put a standard place for an event that occurred in your ancestor's life, depending on the time period and location. So where is the program? Program is under the sitemap. So go back to the bottom of the page and look through the sitemap, and you'll find this wonderful standard find. Now, there are certain programs that we call that what I say you can't get there from here, and that is programs that are completely outside of the whole thing. Okay, so in other words, you can't even really find those programs through any links, even in the sitemap or anyplace else. But they're all part of Family Search, and people will say, "Well, of course, haven't you used what's that program?" And you'll go, "How do you get there?" And they'll say, "Well, I don't know. I just look it up." That's where it comes from. Okay, so here's the first one. It's called Get Satisfaction. Get Satisfaction actually is not Family Search. It is a service company that provides support for what you would call forums or questions or places to lodge complaints or make suggestions. The giant suggestion box here. And but Get Satisfaction plays an important part in the way that the whole program functions, because here's where people are discussing what's wrong with the program, what they don't like, what they want changed, uh, trying to get information about how to resolve issues or problems. All of that's going on in this Get Satisfaction program, and it's getsatisfaction.com/family search, and that's all I know. Someone can leave me a message anonymously if you like, and tell me exactly some other way to get to the program from FamilySearch.org. If you want to get into the getting your questions and answers resolved in FamilySearch.org directly from the program, down at the bottom of the page again, all those page bottoms, you have something called feedback, and the feedback will send a message out to the help center and get you some direct help from the Family Search volunteers who are working in that help center. But and you can call Family Search, and you can go to get help up in the upper right hand corner of the screen, and you can get direct help, and they'll send you to a family history center, or they'll get you online uh, with someone that can help you, or they'll get you on the telephone with someone. And all of those things are available, but Get Satisfaction is kind of where you can go to give your if you have something frustrating. You may find out when you get to get satisfaction that you have to get in line, because there's already been 50 people who have made the same complaint. So basically, the people who are working on Family Search look at the Get Satisfaction program as their cue to get working and resolve some of these difficulties. Okay, so here's another one. It's called beta.familysearch.org. And the beta family search, the problem with this is that this isn't real. This is just a test place for putting up new features and functions in the program. But if you want to look at which might be incorporated or how it might look like in the future, you might be a little disappointed when you go on there, because it looks exactly like Family Search does now, but except for something that's just been changed, and you might not even be aware of what's been changed. But that's where you can see it. And the one problem and the problem is you have to make sure that when you go in the program, up in the corner, there's going to be a little red marker that says beta, beta, beta every page. Be careful you don't put any information in the beta, because it just goes away. It doesn't stay there. So if you think you're going to all of a sudden forget you're in the beta program, you've just lost everything that you entered. But it's an interesting place to go to see, and from time to time, you'll hear people saying, "Well, I was trying the beta, or I was looking at the beta program." Well, this is it. This is it. Beta.familysearch.org. So you can go look at it. It's available to anybody who wants to look at it. Okay, well, here's some more things that might not be available to note about. And they're separate programs. They don't have, you don't find a link to them or anything. And these are the ones that are in the app gallery. So you'd need to go to the app gallery to even find these programs. Or, once again, magic Google, you can look them up. So what we have is a whole set. Oh, I jumped too fast again. A whole set of apps. You have a Family Tree app, you have a Memories app, you have apps for Android, you have for iPhones and iPads. You have the Place Research app, which is related to that standard finder program that I mentioned. You have Memories apps, and these are all available either on the web or both for Android and iPad and iPhones for Apple iOS and OS and the OS X. Now that I did mention the help menu, and I wanted to bring that up because there's a lot of things up here people don't seem to want to go up and click on the Get Help or Help menu. And there's the Help Center, the Get Started link, Contact Us. That's the one you need to. There's also the feedback loop, but there's the Contact Us, gives us contacted on telephones and everything else. And sends you out to family history centers with learning centers. The Learning Center is a huge collection of videos and instructional material that is also available, and I would classify that as kind of a hidden feature as well. And my case is if you've made complaints, you can look in here and see how many complaints you've made. I've got like a page and a half of long list, single spaced list of messages I've sent to Family Search over the years if I wanted to go back and see if they'd ever resolved any of them. There's the Research Wiki, which is another connection to it. And then there's What's New. And helping others has to do with people who are supporting missionaries and volunteers at the family history centers who are helping people with the program, and gives you a direct way of helping people primarily with the family tree program. And here's what the Help Center looks like. This is if you've signed in with your LDS account. If you sign in and you do not have an LDS account, then some of those icons will disappear because they are not part of the being a member of the website or being registered on the website as without being a member of the church. Now, I'm not trying to depreciate indexing. It is a very important part of what we do, and I mentioned earlier the importance of having indexing in order to give us access to records that otherwise would be digitized and have to be searched frame by frame or line by line. And so indexing forms an extremely important part of the whole overall project. It is one of the major portions. But now we have a web-based indexing program available, which I mentioned earlier, that allows people to get onto the program from mobile devices and from even from phones. I think it would be a little bit frustrating to try to do web indexing, indexing, even web-based indexing on a phone. But that may be developed in the not too distant future. There's Family Search blogs. They publish a whole long list of blogs that seems to be almost endless, and you can subscribe to the blogs through the program because they have your one part of registering is having an email address on the program, and they will use that email address. Whether you make it public or not is up to you, but if you don't, Family Search, you can also indicate there and when you sign up whether you want them to send you any kind of information. If you don't ask for it, you don't get it. And so it's a good idea, but you can ask for all this to be sent to you. I'm signed up for every possible email address thing that you can do with Family Search, and I probably get a half a dozen messages a day from them. But if you're ever feeling lonely, or things like that, just sign up for a lot of email. You won't have anything else to do except, like I do, look at email all day long. You can also become a volunteer. There's instructions and information right there in the website for becoming a volunteer. That's also available through the menus down at the bottom of the page, and gives you a certain number of paths for becoming involved directly in family search, either as a missionary or as a volunteer at a family history center, or to participate, even to donate to Family Search. Family Search is a nonprofit corporation. You can donate money and get a deduction for donating to Family Search. So there's also extensive instructions on gifts, donations, and loans. So you can do what you want to do on what's going on with Family Search. Well, thanks for watching. That gives you kind of an overview of all of the stuff that's been going on with that program. Remember that these webinars are recorded and up on the BYU Family History Library YouTube channel, and we'd ask you or request or suggest that you might want to um, subscribe to the channel. The subscribing to the channel, by the way, on YouTube helps us to gain visibility, not just in the genealogical community, but in the greater community at large. So subscribing helps us. Thank you very much for watching. Oh, we got
Yeah,
two
before we
questions.
sign off
Not
real
going to quit
quick,
yet.
James, we have one question from CRW. It says, what is the difference between the pedigree resource files and the ancestral file?
The ancestral file is a was a submitted file of all of the paper genealogy forms that began to be submitted clear back in the 1800s, early 18, late 1800s, early 1900s, up to around 1960. Those paper records were still being submitted. And in fact, into the 70s, there were still some paper records being submitted. It was a collection called the Patron File at the Family History Library, plus other records, and it was all digitized into one huge, massive online file. The pedigree resource file, on the other hand, was a backup, and so there's individual files. So you can still do that. You can still contribute your GEDCOM file to the pedigree resource file, and it will come out, be preserved forever, literally. And but it's individual. So in other words, when I put my pedigree, my contribution, my GEDCOM up on the pedigree resource file, it shows up as my file, and nobody does anything with it or changes it or whatever. But the ancestral file was sort of a total compilation. It took the information and put everything into one big file. So there's the main difference between the two, both of which are user contributed, meaning they're only as good as the user. My record, for example, that went up, the pedigree resource file went up years ago. It's really in rotten shape, and I'm always kind of embarrassed when I run into all my information online, because I wasn't really aware of everything back then, 20, 30 years ago, and so now I live with it. But but they're still good references. They're good to go back and look. And sometimes there's information in there that isn't anyplace else. So you just need to be aware they exist, and they're still online. Okay, other question?
The last one is, if memories can be attached as sources to the family tree.
Oh yeah. There's a method of creating a source, and when you create a new source, you have a option of adding a source from your source box, which is a whole nother part of the program, and that's, I recommend, you go to the Family History Guide, it will help you understand all that. But one of the options is to add a memory from a memory, and you can upload the memory right there while you're creating the source, and then that source is then able to be tagged directly to the person that the source has. So there's a way to do that, and I would, like I said, refer you to the Family History Guide for detailed step-by-step instructions on how to do that.
Perfect. Thank you so much, James. And thanks to all those who joined us today for the webinar. If you would like to, leave the feedback at the bottom of the screen for today's webinar. Also, if there's any topics that you're interested in hearing about in the next month or so, go ahead and leave those topics down at the bottom as well. Again, a reminder, our next webinar is tomorrow at 3 p.m., again with James Tanner. And we look forward to seeing you then.